Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something really interesting, maybe a bit unexpected. It's the global carbon black for packaging market.
Right.
Our mission, like always, is to pull out the key insights from the market research we've got here and, figure out what it all means for you. So we have this really detailed report. It looks at market size, how different regions are doing, which countries are big players, and the forecast basically from 2021 through to 2033. And we'll be using compound annual growth rates, KJARs, to get a sense of the pace, how fast things are changing.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because you look at the numbers for what seems like maybe a pretty niche material, but they actually show some really big global shifts, some surprising leaders popping up. This dive is basically your shortcut to getting smart about an industry that's, well, kind of hidden, but really crucial. It's everywhere.
That's a good point. Maybe give us a quick primer on carbon black itself, for packaging specifically.
Sure. So carbon black is a really fundamental additive, especially in plastics for packaging. Its value comes from a few things. It gives great UV protection, which is vital for preserving contents. It adds strength, makes packaging more durable. Of course, it provides that deep black color we see so often. And sometimes it even adds electrical conductivity. Think about smart packaging applications. So yeah, very versatile stuff. You find it in tons of everyday items.
Okay, super helpful context. Right, let's start with the big picture then, the global view. The source says the market was worth just over, what, $200 million back in 2021, so $201.5 million
Hmm.
roughly. And it's expected to grow to nearly $230 million by 2025 and keep climbing to almost $300 million, $297 million and change by 2033.
So quite a jump over the decade.
Yeah, and the overall CAGR, that growth rate, is pegged at about 3.3%. So not explosive, but really steady, consistent growth.
A solid upward trend.
Exactly. So the big question is, where's this growth actually happening around the world? Let's unpack that.
Okay, yeah, breaking it down by region tells some interesting stories. Each one's a bit different.
All right, let's kick off with North America. The report puts it at around $51 million in 2021, and that's expected to grow to about $70 million by 2033. That works out to a CHAR of roughly 2.6% per year. Pretty solid.
Right, solid and steady. And within North America, the U.S. is consistently the main driver. It accounts for a big chunk, projected to reach almost $56 million by 2033.
Okay.
But what's kind of interesting is Canada, while smaller, its growth rate is actually a bit faster, expanding at about 3.3% annually.
Oh, interesting. Any idea why?
Well, it could suggest some specific things happening there, maybe in certain industrial packaging areas, or maybe some new applications catching on faster.
Right.
Hard to say for sure from just this number, but it's notable. And Mexico's contributing steadily too, growing at nearly 2.8% a year.
Okay, let's hop over to Europe then. Total regional market there was around $40 million in 2021, and that's forecast to hit just over $55 million by 2033. So the growth rate, the CAGR, is about 2.8%, a little higher than North America overall.
Yeah, respectable growth. And within Europe, Germany really jumps out. It's got the highest growth rate in the region, expanding at nearly 3.5% a year.
Wow, 3.5% in a market like Germany. That's quite strong.
It is. It suggests there's significant activity there.
Hmm.
Perhaps it's tied to their strong manufacturing base, automotive, high-value consumer goods, things that need specialized, robust packaging.
Makes sense. And the UK.
The UK also shows pretty robust growth. It's projected to hit over $7.5 million by 2033, growing around 3.1% annually.
Okay.
And then you got other major players like France, Italy, Spain. They're all showing consistent growth too, mostly in the 2.2% to 3.1% range. Russia, though, seems to be on a, let's say, more modest path according to these figures.
Right. Okay, now Asia
Yeah.
Pacific. The numbers here look, well, pretty different. The region reported nearly $81 million in revenue back in 2021.
Already the biggest region.
Exactly. But it's forecast to surge to over $127 million by 2033. That's the highest regional CAGR we've seen, yet almost 3.9% annually.
Yeah, nearly 4%. That's significant.
So what's behind that? What's really driving that huge growth in Asia Pacific?
Well, it's a combination of factors, really. You've got, obviously, the massive populations, but also huge infrastructure development happening. There's the booming e-commerce sector, which just eats up packaging.
Right?
And rising disposable incomes mean more people buying more packaged goods.
Yeah.
It's just, fertile ground for materials like carbon black.
Makes total sense. And country-wise?
China is a huge piece of that puzzle, of course, set to grow to almost $35 million by 2033, expanding at an impressive 4.1% rate each year.
Okay, strong.
But here's something really interesting. India. India shows incredibly strong growth, projected to hit over $18 million by 2033, but with the highest CAGR in the whole region, over 4.7% annually.
Wow, 4.7%. That really jumps off the page. That signals a huge shift, industrially and consumer-wise.
Absolutely, it's a phenomenal growth.
What about other players there?
Well, Japan also adds a significant amount, growing steadily at 3.3%. South Korea is expanding around 3.2%. And then you have countries like Australia, Singapore, Taiwan. They're also contributing quite a bit, with growth rates varying between, say, 2.8% and a really high 4.3% for Singapore. It's just a powerhouse region for this market.
Clearly. Okay, moving south then, South America,
Yeah.
smaller numbers overall, just under $14 million in 2021, but projected to reach over $21 million by 2033. The growth rate there is also pretty healthy, 3.5% annually.
Yeah, another region showing strong momentum. Brazil is the clear leader there, growing from over $5 million to nearly $7.7 million across the forecast period.
Okay.
But other countries like Argentina, Colombia, Peru are also kicking in strongly. Their markets are expanding anywhere from roughly 3% to over 4.1% annually. So definitely a region to keep an eye on as those economies develop.
Right. On to the Middle East. Total revenue there was nearly $11 million in 2021. That's forecast to increase to almost $16.4 million by 2033. A solid CAGR, similar to South America, around 3.4% per year.
hmm And Saudi Arabia leads the way in the Middle East, growing at about 3.5% annually. That takes it from just over $2 million to over $3.3 million by 2033.
Okay.
And you also see countries like Turkey, the UAE, Egypt. Their markets are all expanding by over 3% each year, too. It indicates, pretty widespread development and use of this material across the region.
Got it. And last but not least, Africa reached about $4.6 million in 2021, expected to climb to just over $7 million by 2033. The NGIGR here is a bit lower, around 2.7% annually.
Yeah, a bit more modest growth overall compared to some other developing regions. But
Yep.
within Africa, South Africa shows consistent growth. Its market is expanding by over 3.2% annually, making it a key player for the region.
Okay.
Nigeria is also contributing positively, growing at almost 3% each year.
So let's try and bring this all together. The main takeaway seems crystal clear, doesn't it? The global market for carbon black in packaging is definitely on a strong upward path,
Absolutely.
fueled by that consistent demand across regions and, ongoing improvements in packaging tech. It really is kind of a silent powerhouse material.
Yeah, and if you connect the dots, the really fascinating thing is the contrast you see. On one hand, you've got this rapid expansion in places like Asia Pacific and South America, dynamic, fast-moving growth.
Right.
And on the other, you have the steadier, more stable growth in the mature markets, North America and Europe. Still significant, but telling a different story about maturity, maybe consumer habits, industrial focus.
Exactly. Both important, but different dynamics at play. And the report does call out some key contributors, doesn't it? Countries where you'd expect, investment and innovation to really be concentrated. We're talking India and China, clearly the big global growth engines here. And then Germany and Europe and Singapore showing that strong growth in APAC too.
Yeah.
That's kind of the aha moment for you, right? Pinpointing where the real action is for this pretty vital material.
Precisely. And it's worth just restating all these numbers, the insights we've walked through, they come directly from cognitive market research.
Yeah.
So it's reliable, expert-compelled data we're looking at.
Good point. Always important to know the source. So wrapping up, it makes you wonder, what does the steady rise mean for the future of the packaging you see and use every day? And maybe what other sort of under-the-radar materials might be having similar, quiet, but really significant market shifts happening right now? Something to think about.
Yeah, that feeling when you pick up a product, maybe open a package, and it just feels, well, solid, protected. There's often an unsung hero working silently inside that packaging, doing some pretty heavy lifting. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of those essential yet, largely invisible materials, carbon black for packaging. This deep dive, it's going to reveal some, I think, surprising insights into a material that plays a really critical role in your daily life, even if you never really thought about it. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is just how deeply intertwined understanding the market dynamics of carbon black in packaging really is with the entire global industry. Its reach, it stretches across so many sectors, from the basics of manufacturing to the complex dance of logistics, and even right down to the consumer choices we all make. It's truly a foundational element.
Absolutely, it really is. So our mission today, using the sources you share with us, is basically to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge. We want to uncover the key drivers, powering its growth, but also the significant restraints it faces, and maybe look at the emerging trends that are shaping its future. Think of this as your shortcut to being genuinely well informed about this really evolving market. So when we think about what really drives the demand for carbon black in packaging, what did you say is its like foundational superpower, its irreplaceable quality?
Well, its absolute core strength, I'd say, the thing that makes it pretty much indispensable in so many applications, is its incredible ability to provide UV protection. Especially in plastic packaging, it's like an invisible shield, for the materials themselves. Just think about the sheer economic impact of simply giving a longer shelf life to agricultural films, for instance. Carbon black isn't just blocking UV rays there. It's kind of a silent guardian against crop spoilage, which indirectly safeguards livelihoods and helps reduce global food waste on a massive scale.
Yeah.
That's a level of impact you don't often attribute to just, a simple additive.
That's really interesting. I hadn't actually realized its role stretched quite that far. Beyond sunlight, though, I imagine the demands of, well, a world driven by online shopping and global supply chains must play a huge role too, right?
Yeah.
How does carbon black meet the needs of that rapidly expanding e-commerce and logistics sector?
Oh, it's absolutely crucial there. Yeah. Carbon black doesn't just add strength, though it does do that. It significantly enhances the mechanical resilience of packaging materials. And that's vital when goods are being, jostled through endless transit points. But maybe even more uniquely, it also improves the electrical conductivity. Just imagine what happens when a delicate circuit board gets hit with static discharge in It's like a tiny silent explosion for the electronics. Carbon black literally grounds that risk. It dissipates the static, which makes it ideal for safely shipping sensitive stuff like electronics or even certain chemicals. That saves companies potentially millions in damaged goods.
Right. And from a business angle, beyond those performance benefits, I'm guessing cost effectiveness must also be a pretty significant driver. How does it manage to be both, high performing and economical?
Well, what's really insightful about its cost effectiveness isn't just saving money directly. It's how it lets manufacturers achieve premium performance, things like superior tensile strength, consistent deep color, but with less virgin material. It's sort of an efficiency multiplier. You're getting more out of less, essentially. By reinforcing materials and ensuring that visual appeal, it lets companies be more efficient with their resources. That gives them a real competitive edge, both in function and aesthetics.
Okay, so lots of clear advantages, but no market is without its hurdles. Given the huge global focus on sustainability right now, I can definitely imagine carbon black faces some pretty pressing issues,
Yeah.
especially around environmental and health concerns.
You're spot on. Yeah, this is a significant challenge, no doubt. Since carbon black is typically derived from fossil fuels and, well, it can pose health risks, particularly when it's airborne as fine dust during manufacturing, its usage is increasingly under scrutiny. You have regulatory restrictions tightening up, plus a growing public awareness. It's all putting pressure on industries. They either need to adopt much safer handling practices or actively explore alternatives, especially in applications where consumer safety is really paramount.
Right. And given those environmental and health pressures, what other specific hurdles does it face? I'm thinking particularly about using it in something as sensitive as, say, food-grade packaging.
That's a critical point, absolutely. Agencies like the US FDA, the European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, they impose very strict guidelines on how carbon black can be used if it might come into direct contact with food. These compliance challenges, they often limit its use mainly to secondary or industrial packaging, or maybe applications where it's definitely not a direct food contact material, and that, can narrow its market scope quite a bit.
It also sounds like the market might be facing some stiff competition from, well, new players, new materials. I'm sure the emergence of alternative pigments and additives must be a big factor.
It absolutely is, yeah. As sustainability moves, right to the top of the priority list for so many companies, we're seeing a definite shift towards things like biodegradable additives, maybe bio-based colorants, even completely transparent packaging solutions sometimes. These eco-friendly innovations are definitely pushing carbon black manufacturers to evolve and evolve rapidly. Or, they risk being replaced in industries that are becoming much more environmentally conscious and just looking for greener alternatives.
Okay, so it's clear there are challenges. But
Well,
let's shift gears a bit and look at the more exciting stuff, the innovations and trends shaping the future of this market. One standout trend I'm seeing is the increased adoption of carbon black in like smart packaging and anti-static packaging.
Yes. This is a truly fascinating area, actually. With the rise of IoT, digitally tracked logistics, packaging needs to do more than just protect. It needs to be smarter, maybe actively communicate. And carbon black's inherent conductive properties, they're making it a preferred additive for electrostatic discharge, or ESD protection. This is absolutely critical for sensitive electronics, industrial components. It prevents damage that could happen in like microseconds. So its role here is really evolving from just a static protector to a dynamic enabler of smarter supply chains.
And speaking of sustainability, it seems like there's also a big push towards integrating carbon black with recyclable and sustainable materials. That seems to address some of those earlier concerns we talked about.
That's a really key development, yes. Companies are actively finding innovative ways to blend carbon black with post-consumer recycled polymers, things like recycled HDPZ and PP. This aligns perfectly with global efforts towards, a more circular economy. This combination allows packaging solutions to maintain their structural integrity, keep that critical performance,
Hmm.
while simultaneously being more environmentally responsible by, giving new life to recycled plastics.
Interesting. And finally, for brands that really want to make a visual statement, there's this emergence of specialty grades of carbon black, specifically for aesthetic packaging. This seems to elevate it beyond just being a functional additive.
Precisely. Exactly. These refined grades, they're all about visual impact and brand perception. They offer much deeper, jet black colors and excellent dispersion qualities. That makes them ideal for luxury packaging. Think about personal care products, high-end automotive parts maybe, premium consumer goods. For brands looking to create that powerful, really premium visual experience, these specialty grades are quickly becoming a design essential. It's transforming what was once maybe purely functional into something that contributes directly to a product's overall appeal.
So what does this all mean? We've covered, well, quite a lot of ground today, from carbon black's essential functional roles like UV protection and enabling e-commerce resilience to the complex challenges it faces with environmental regulations, health concerns, and then into these exciting, innovative future directions in smart packaging, aesthetic uses, sustainability. This market is clearly being shaped by a complex mix of innovation, evolving demand, and growing responsibility.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really highlights how even a single material like carbon black, it kind of exemplifies the constant tension and evolution within global industries, doesn't it? It's this continuous balancing act between performance, cost, and of course, the growing demand for sustainability and responsible sourcing. Every material, really, no matter how small its role might seem on the surface, is part of this dynamic, interconnected system constantly adapting.
Right. And that leaves us with a final, maybe provocative thought for you, the listener, to ponder. Considering the essential role of materials like carbon black and protection and efficiency,
Hmm.
how might future innovations bridge that gap between high-performance functionality and the growing demand for truly sustainable, universally applicable solutions across all types of packaging?